Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Oil for the Journey. I am your journey reader, Alexis, and today's reading is taken from 1 Chronicles chapters 18 to 21. Our scheduled reading follows the Bridges for Peace Ignite the Truth Bible reading plan. I will be reading from the ESV version, so feel free to follow along if you can. If not, just keep me in your ears. In chapter 18. After this, David defeated the Philistines and subdued them. And he took Gath and its villages out of the hand of the Philistines. And he defeated Moab, and the Moabites became servants to David and brought tribute. David also defeated Hadadezer, king of Zobah Hamath, as he set up his monument at the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,000 chariots, 7,000 horsemen, and 20,000 foot soldiers. And David hamstrung all the chariot horses, but left enough for 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David struck down 22,000 men of the Syrians. Then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus, and the Syrians became servants to David and brought tribute. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. Verse 7. And David took the shields of gold that were carried by the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Tibath, from Kun, cities of Hadadezer, David took a large amount of bronze. With it, Solomon made the bronze sea and the pillars of the vessels of bronze. The pillars and the vessels of bronze, When King Tal, the king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated the whole army of Hadadezer, king of Zobah, he sent his son Hadaram to King David to ask about his health and to bless him, because he had fought against Hadadezer and defeated him. For Hadadezer had often been at war with Tal, and he sent all sorts of articles of gold and silver and of bronze. These also King David dedicated to the Lord, together with the silver and gold that he had carried off from the nations from Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, and the Philistines, and Amalek. And Abishai, the son of Zerah, killed 18,000 Edomites at the Valley of Salt. Then he put garrisons in Edom, and all the Edomites became servants of David, and the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. Verse 14. So David reigned all over Israel, and he administered justice and equity to all of his people. And Joab the son of Zerah was over the army, and Jehoshaphat the son of Aluad was recorder, and Zodok the son of Anthub and Ahimelech the son of Abiathar were priests, and Shavsha this was secretary, and Benaniah the son of Jehoiada was over the Cheronites and the Philistines, and David's sons were the chief officials in the service of the king. Chapter 20. The Ammonites disgraced David's men. Now after this, Nahash, the king of the Ammonites, died, and his son reigned in his place. And David said, I will deal kindly with Hanun the son of Nahash, for his father dealt kindly with me. So David sent a message to console him, considering his father. And David's servants came to the land of the Ammonites, to Hashon, to console him. And the princes of the Ammonites said to Hanun, Do you think because David has sent comforters to you that he is honoring your father? Have not his servants come to you to search and overthrow and spy out the land? Oh, you gotta watch for these people who keep on you. So Hanun took David's servants and shaved them and cut off their garments in the middle at their hips and sent them away. And they departed. When David was told concerning the men, he sent messengers to meet them, for the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, Remain at Jericho until your beards have grown, and then return. Verse 6. Then the Ammonites saw that they had become a stench to David. Hanun and the Ammonites sent 1,000 talents of silver to hire chariots and horsemen from Mesopotamia, from Aram and from Zobah. They had 32,000 chariots, and the king of Mac with his army, who came and encamped before Medeba. And the Ammonites were mustered from their cities and came to battle. When David heard of it, he sent Joab and all the army of the mighty men. And the Ammonites came out and drew up battle array at the entrance of the city, and the kings who had come were by themselves in open country. Verse 10. Ammonites and Syrians defeated. When Joab saw that the battle was set against him both in front and at the rear, he chose some of his best men of Israel and arrayed them against the Syrians. The rest of his men he put in charge of Abishai his brother, and they were arrayed against the Ammonites. And he said, "If the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will help you. Be strong, and let us use our strength for our people, and for the cities of our God, and may the Lord do what seems good to him." Verse 14. So Joab and the people who were with him drew near before the Syrians for battle, and they fled before him. And when the Ammonites saw that the Syrians fled, they likewise fled before Abishai, Joab's brother, and entered the city. Then Joab came to Jerusalem. But when the Syrians saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they sent messengers and brought out the Syrians who were beyond the Euphrates, with Shobach, the commander of the army of Hadadezer, at their head. Verse 17. And when it was told to David, he gathered all Israel together and crossed the Jordan and came to them and drew up his forces against them. And when David set the battle in array against the Syrians, they fought with him. And the Syrians fled before Israel, and David killed the Syrians. And David killed of the Syrians the men of 7,000 chariots and 40,000 foot soldiers, and put to death also the commander of their army. And when the servants of Hadadezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they made peace with David and became subject to him. So the Syrians were not willing to save the Ammonites anymore. Chapter 20. The capture of Rabbah. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, Joab led the army and ravaged the country of the Ammonites, and came and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. And Joab struck down Rabbah and overthrew it. And David took the crown of their king from his head. He found it weighed a talent of gold, and it was a precious stone. And it was placed on David's head, and he brought out the spoil of the city, a very great amount. Verse 3. And he brought out the people who were in it, and set them to labor, with saws and iron picks and axes. And thus David did to all the cities of the Ammonites. Then David and all his people returned to Jerusalem. Verse 4. Philistine giants killed. And after this there arose war with the Philistines at Gezer. Then Shobach the Hashmonite struck down Shappai, who was one of the descendants of the giants, and the Philistines were subdued. And there was again war with the Philistines, and Elian, the son of Jair, struck down Lamai, the brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was again war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number, and he also descended from giants. And when he taunted Israel, Jonathan the son of Shema, David's brother, struck him down. They were descended from giants in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. That's full circle. David's census brings pestilence. Chapter 21. Then Satan stood against Israel and incited David to number Israel. So David said to Joab and the commanders of his army, "Go, number Israel from Beersheba to Dan, and bring me a report that I may know their number." But Joab said, "May the Lord add to his people 100 times as many as they are. Are they not, my lord, the king, all of them my lord's servants? Why then should my lord require this? Why should it be cause of guilt for Israel?" But the king's word prevailed against Joab. So Joab departed and went throughout all Israel and came back to Jerusalem. And Joab gave the sum of the numbering of people to David. In Israel there were 1,100,000 men who drew the sword, and in Judah there were 4,070 who drew the sword. My apologies. I will read verse 5, starting from verse 5 again. And Joab gave the sum of the numbering of the people to David. In all Israel there were 1,100,000 men who drew the sword, and in Judah there were 470,000 who drew the sword. But he did not include Levi and Benjamin in the numbering, for the king's command was abhorrent to Joab. Abhorrent. But God was displeased with this thing and struck Israel. And David said to God, "I have sinned greatly in that I have done this thing. But now, please take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have acted foolishly." And the Lord spoke to Gad, David's seer, saying, "Go and say to David, thus says the Lord, 3 things I offer you. Choose one of them, that I may do it to you." So Gad came to David and said to him, "Thus saith the Lord, choose what you will, either 3 years of famine, or 3 months of devastation by your foes, while the sword of your enemies overtakes you, or else 3 days of the sword of the Lord, pestilence on the land, with the angel of the Lord destroying throughout all the territory of Israel. Now decide what answer I shall return to him who sent me." Then David said to Gad, "I am in great distress. Let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is very great, but do not let me fall into the hand of man." So the Lord sent a pestilence on Israel, and 70,000 men of Israel fell ill. And God sent the angel to Jerusalem to destroy it. But as he was about to destroy it, the Lord saw and he relented from the calamity. And he said to the angel who was working destruction, "It is enough. Now stay your hand." And the angel of the Lord was standing by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And David lifted his eyes and saw the angel of the Lord standing between earth and heaven, and in his hand a drawn sword stretched out over Jerusalem. Then David and the elders, clothed in sackcloth, fell upon their faces. Verse 17. And David said to God, "Was it not I who gave command to number the people? It is I who have sinned and done great evil. But these sheep, what have they done? Please let your hand, O Lord my God, be against me and against my father's house, but do not let the plague be on your people." David builds an altar. Verse 18. Now the angel of the Lord had commanded Gad to say to David that David should go up and raise an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. So David went up at Gad's word, which he had spoken in the name of the Lord. Now Ornan was threshing wheat. He turned and saw the angel, and his 4 sons who were with him hid themselves. As David came to Ornan, Ornan looked and saw David, and went out from the threshing floor and paid homage to David with his face to the ground. Chapter 22. And David said to Ornan, "Give me the site of the threshing floor, that I may build on it an altar to the Lord. Give it to me at its full price, and the plague may be averted from the people." Then Ornan said to David, "Take it, and let my lord the king do what seems good to him. See, I give the oxen for burnt offering, and the threshing sleds for the wood, and the wheat for the grain offering. I give it all." But King David said to Ornan, "No, but I will buy it for the full price. I will not take for the Lord what is yours, nor offer burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David paid Ornan 600 shekels of gold, 5 weeks for the site. And David built there an altar to the Lord and presented burnt offerings and peace offerings, and called the Lord. And the Lord answered him with fire from heaven upon the altar of burnt offering. Verse 27. Then the Lord commanded the angel, and he put his sword back into his sheath. At that time, when David saw the Lord had answered him at the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, he sacrificed there. For the tabernacle of the Lord, which Moses had made in the wilderness on the altar of burnt offerings, were at the time in the high place at Gibeon. But David could not go before it to inquire of God, for he was afraid of the sword of the angel of the Lord. And that is all from me. Please come back again tomorrow to continue on our journey. Have a very blessed day.